Hi, welcome to Digital Dialogs, your compact conversations on the future of technology. My name is Rene from Reply, and today we're going to explore learning from nature, bio-inspired control and robotic locomotion. Well, that's quite an amazing topic, and it also comes in a series. We already had discussions on swarm robotics, like how you also get inspiration from nature and lots of other robotic conversations. But today I'm super excited to actually speak here with Professor Auke Ijspeert. Hi, Auke, how are you today? And I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, finally.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, hello. I'm very happy to be here today, and all good here. Sunny day in Lausanne, so all very good.
Sunny day in Lausanne and at the Alps, or the Alps shining nice and awesome. I love it.
I see the snow from my on the mountains from my office, so yeah,
Ah,
it's a nice day.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, before we start, you already told us you're in Lausanne, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and maybe also share a little bit how you ended up, what you're doing today, like what inspired you and led you on a journey? But first of all, tell us about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm leading the biorobotics lab here at EPFL, and EPFL is the ETH Lausanne for people from Germany. It's the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne. And I've been here almost 23 years now. And I had studied here before as a physicist, and now I'm back as a professor in robotics. And what we do in the lab is very much interdisciplinary. So we love animals in my lab, and we especially like locomotion. And a big topic of my lab is to see how we can use, on one hand, robots as scientific tools to better understand animal locomotion. And also, we want to take, of course, inspiration from animals to make better robots and new ways of moving around like animals do so well.
Mhm. That's pretty awesome because animals are like if you look at certain animals, it's incredible like how also adaptive they are, right? They're like adapting to a certain environment. I mean, with animals, they can basically act in like in all kind of environments we have around, or like cockroaches is a classic example, for example, right? It's like unkillable kind of.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah. And the more I work in robotics, the more I'm really fascinated and impressed by animals. You become very humble, in fact, when you try to replicate them in robots. You see that even us as bipeds, we move and we rarely fall. And bringing that to robot that can move around, do not get stuck, is very hard. So I love this field. And indeed, I also think that taking a robotics perspective to understand animals is very interesting, because then you like understanding by building the fact that
yeah.
you see how the components work together, try to replicate a beautiful locomotion skill, and then also try to reverse engineer how different modes of locomotion have evolved from swimming to walking is something we find super interesting.
I can totally see that. Super fascinating topic. And so let's dive a little bit deeper into this at the work you're doing at EPFL and the Biorobotics Lab. Explain please to our audience how your research in computational neuroscience is also playing a role here, and applying this also with like nonlinear dynamics, and how all of this comes together, and also kind of a cross collaboration team. How does this drive and inform the design of these bio-inspired locomotion controllers?
Yeah. So first of all, there's some construction next door. So I hope every so often you might hear something. I hope it doesn't disturb the audio. So what we do in the lab is indeed collaborate a lot with people in neuroscience or biomechanics to try to reverse engineer the principles of animal locomotion. And
Mm-hmm.
here, indeed, one thing that we now study a lot is the spinal cord circuits. So these are really invertebrate animals, really a central part of locomotion control.
Mm-hmm.
Many animals can do locomotion without the higher part of the brain. It's really the spinal cord control that's in charge. And what we make is indeed mathematical models of these spinal cord circuits that we then program on board of microcontrollers on our different types of robots. And thanks to that, we can then test hypotheses of how things work in the real animal.
Mm-hmm.
To give you an example, one of my favorite animal is a salamander, an amphibian. And salamanders are super interesting because they can nicely swim and walk. They are amphibious. but also they are a key animal from an evolution point of view. So salamanders are, in fact, the living ancestors of all terrestrial vertebrates, including us. So at some point, we had a salamander-like granddad a long time ago. And so what we do for many years now is study the spinal cord of the salamander, and we have been able to show that the spinal cord is beautiful, and by replicating it on the robot, we are able to make models that, with very simple input from a remote control, like the one that you have from a remote control car, we can nicely steer the type of swimming, the type of walking and turning that the animal is able to do. And by doing that, we got a much better understanding of how the real spinal cord of the salamander works, and especially his impressive ability to switch gaits by just pressing the gas pedal, like just providing more stimulus to the spinal cord of the salamander makes it switch between walking and swimming. So that's one example of how a robotic study has given insight into animal locomotion.
The salamander is quite interesting also, or other reptiles, like, also with, they have kind of suction cups, built in kind of, which is not just the locomotion, right? Like, but also the whole physiology is quite impressive. And well, I just hope we don't get inspired too much by the reptile brain, kind of, the classic joke with the alligator brain that comes up with certain folks. And I hope we don't apply this to robotics. But joke aside, that's of course definitely a super interesting way of movement, right? Like super special movement as well. Yeah.
But if you may, I'll politely disagree with you
Yeah.
in the sense that I think one of the beauty of evolution and of animal control is it's really multi-layered control, where
Yeah.
indeed during evolution we often add a layer of control above a previous layer, and it led to a very robust control architecture. So that's something we also show in other projects, is
Uh-huh.
how by taking the spinal cord and then the brainstem and then indeed a bit the older part of the brain of reptiles, and then if you add the cortex we have in mammals, this multi-layered control is super interesting to be very robust and very efficient. Also, like a brain needs only a few watts of energy compared to a supercomputer, so it's energy efficient, very robust, and nature has invented this to handle time delays. So that's a big challenge animals have compared to robots,
Yeah.
is that the delays in the control loop in an animal are 3 orders of magnitude bigger than in a robot. So animals had to tackle these time delays, and thanks to this multi-layered control, they're able to do amazing things despite having very slow computational elements.
It's a very good point. Like, it's kind of like a modular architecture in a sense, right? And there's like a more sophisticated things built on top of after the evolutionary stack. That's fascinating, actually, to think about this.
Yeah.
It's just like software development, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think about it, that's what evolution has done. Because like something we study now in my lab is to see how. Like one thing that's super fascinating is that the morphology of animals is very diverse, and the
Yeah.
modes of locomotion and the ecological niches and the media in which they move are very different. But the underlying control principles are surprisingly conserved. So it looked like nature has invented a very nice control architecture that during evolution it could fairly easily download in a new body, like a new limb or a modified body.
Yeah.
And I find it very interesting from a scientific point of view, and also super interesting from a robotics point of view, because it's a bit the holy grail of robotics, like
Yeah.
a foundational model of locomotion that you could download in a new morphology, and with a bit of tuning you get moving. And that's what I love between this interaction between science and robotics in this field.
It's fascinating to look at this from this lens, from the bio-inspired lens, and it totally, like, then all of these things make more sense. I think, like, if you look at the world and how these stacks up, and yeah, super fascinating. Let's talk about an example, maybe, because you study animal locomotion and you have actually concrete implementations with robotics, and in particular, of course, with control methodologies. So maybe you can talk about an example, how you enabled complex navigation in environments and so on, how that was bio-inspired.
Yeah. So one example is the salamander robot that we developed that you can do swimming and walking
Yeah,
under remote supervision of a human operator. So we are more locomotion people, let's say, than navigation
sure.
people, but we want
Absolutely.
to study that. A bit more recent project is we studied also how multiple type of sensory feedback play a very important role in addition to what I would call the feed-forward aspect of locomotion control.
Mm-hmm.
And there, a fairly cool project that we published in Science Robotics was to show that the information you have on your skin is super important as well. And for swimming, for instance, we could show that embedding tactile sensing on our swimming robot, like eel-like robot or snake-like robot that can swim, we could show that surprisingly, this local sensing is sufficient to drive the local oscillators and to couple them and to coordinate the whole system. So normally you would expect these oscillators to be coupled together internally to synchronize
Mm-hmm.
with a feed-forward aspect. But here we could show that just the local sensing closes the loop beautifully and have beautiful emergent traveling wave and very robust swimming. And that's surprising because that means in principle, you could make a robot made of small parts that do not communicate at all together. They just need to locally sense the pressure.
Yeah.
And then you have emergent and stable locomotion appearing out of the interaction with the environment. So that was both an interesting scientific insight of this like self-organization of locomotion, and
Mm-hmm.
from an engineering point of view, an interesting fault-tolerant system that can
Definitely.
be very much distributed and robust.
Well, that's super fascinating, actually. So you have like all the limbs and so on. They independently. It's kind of decentralized system, and somehow at a certain stage, of course, if one limb makes a strong like movement, the other one needs to compensate and so on. And at a certain point, they find a nice stable kind of mode, right? By self organizing in the end. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. And it's a big question, by the way, in neuroscience and also in robotics, is how to combine feed forward and feedback control.
Mm-hmm.
And the lesson is basically try to rely a lot on the morphology, on the embodiment, and
Yeah.
then the feedback gives you a coordination mechanism. So it's in social physical intelligence where the mechanics, the muscle properties, we also simulate muscle properties, all play a role in stabilizing and generating good locomotion.
Wow. That's.
Maybe another example
Mhm.
that I find also quite exciting is now a big topic we have in my lab is to see how animals are capable of planning and doing anticipation. We are not only reactive people, we anticipate a lot.
Sure.
I guess anybody that goes running in a forest knows about it. You always look ahead, like 5 meters ahead. You don't look at your feet. You look 5 meters ahead, and I like to run myself. I'm always impressed by how good we are at predicting where our foot will be and how we should modify it to jump over a river or walk on
Mm-hmm.
stones,
Yeah.
always looking ahead. So we somehow, our brain has a very good internal model of the world and a very
Yes.
good model of how it should discuss and interact with the spinal cord to modify locomotion. And to bring this to robotics, what I find quite exciting is we can now mix like deep reinforcement learning, like
Mm-hmm.
all these nice methods of AI, and combine them with our spinal cord models and have very nice anticipation of quadrupeds running around, jumping over gaps, climbing up. And we discovered that, like nature, having this multi-layered control where the spinal cord model is in charge of handling all the perturbation, the pattern
Mm-hmm.
generation at a low level. And the deep reinforcement learning can learn how to play with these low level circuits. And it's a beautiful interface that leads to very robust locomotion, which we believe is exactly what happens in animals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think also the reinforcement learning approach does make sense if you look at biological nature and so on. I mean, if you have kids and so on, and you've seen like your little babies learn all these things, it's try and error pretty much. Of course, we teach some stuff, but yeah, reinforcement learning is the way to go there. I can totally see that. So all of these things now are coming together, right? We have novel AI techniques, I would say, like reinforcement learning, but also others emerging. We also have things that are emerging like JEPA and other like word model approaches. Um, Yeah, so I think like we need a little bit also more advancements in the field of AI in particular. So I don't think the language models is going to provide us all of it. Like there's a lot of speculation at this point, but I don't think like this will lead to a full world model that lacks a bunch of things because like the world is not just text, obviously.
Yeah.
And you cannot simply like encode everything with text
Mhm.
efficiently, for sure not.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that's I'm giving you an opinion piece. But anyhow, have you like in your lab and so on in your research, like what is the maybe the some of the generative AI? How does it affect you in your work? Maybe you can talk a little bit about this.
So first of all, I completely agree with you what you said in the sense that AI is very much data driven or text driven, as you said, and in robotics, data is just one part of the problem. I think robotics is interacting with the world. It is physically playing with things. It's the interaction is much more than data, and that's is both an opportunity and a challenge. It's an opportunity in the sense that sometimes you can perfectly solve a problem just with the right mechanics, like a soft material, a soft gripper
Yeah,
can do something much better than AI to grasp something complicated. The challenge, of course, is to then how to do learning in simulation and then bringing it to the real world. But there, this what we call the sim to real gap between simulators and the real world
yeah,
is getting easier and easier to cross. So thanks to better and better simulators, we now have a nice transfer from one to the other. But for sure, I completely agree with you that it's the interaction that's important. It's not just the data or the text.
yes,
Now,
exactly.
yeah. Now, to answer your question, I have one of my hobby project. It's a bit a side project, but one I love is we have a project where we want to make assistive robotic furniture. So it's still related to locomotion, but it's related to helping people who have lost mobility. Like
Okay.
if you're in a wheelchair,
Yeah,
we have this dream to embed robotic furniture that helps you, that is assistive. So
yeah,
rather than having a humanoid robot, why not have your furniture sometimes helping you, being able to move, manipulate things?
love it.
And once you don't need it anymore, it's just a piece of furniture. And there we use a lot of like we start using the visual language models to see
Hmm.
how can you recognize your environment, people, the type of objects, and how could you possibly give instructions to the framework. That, by the way, very challenging to say how could you explain your chair to say pick me up that glass of water there and bring it to me. So there we link nicely to all the visual language models.
Yeah,
And in terms of robotics, we have some demonstrators where we can have like 4 or 5 pieces of furniture move around, and you can configure them from a tablet. And when you cross the apartment in a wheelchair, they will go out of the way and then come back. So
wow.
it offers many interesting opportunities with embedding mobility and manipulation abilities in the furniture.
I love this thinking outside of the box. Clearly, here it's like instead of having to adapt your environment and your furniture because you got a disability, maybe you had an accident and then now have to rely on a wheelchair or something. Instead of doing this, you actually make your furniture smart to get out of the way. It's like that's science fiction actually, right?
Yeah,
This is like this is from fairy tale kind of.
yeah. Yeah,
This,
no, and I think that's a role of academia. In fact, to be honest, is to we are lucky to be in academia. To we can dream a bit. We can do blue sky
I love it.
research. We can look far ahead. We don't need to make money on a short time scale. And to be honest, I'm not sure everybody will like it. It will have there are many problems to solve. And I think it will be very much user dependent. Some people will love it, some will hate it to have furniture that moves. But indeed, it's a bit an unexplored area, and we starting to have some cool demos that you can check on our website where we show some movies of furniture moving around.
That's awesome. So, folks, make sure to check this out on the website of the EPFL. Um, I had a final question for you regarding what's the future going to hold up, and maybe you can think a little bit about like what's the vision and what's going to happen. Some emerging trends. You already mentioned that you're also looking into bio-inspired muscles that kind of stuff. I've seen some companies that are building like kind of artificial muscles and so on. It's quite fascinating, but also the demos, like what they show, they look a little bit like Westworld or some other sci-fi series, a little bit weird. But anyhow, maybe you can share a little bit about what are some of the emerging trends that you see in your field in bio-inspired robotics, and how might further advances in the field of AI further push the boundaries forward. And yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about the future.
Yeah. I would say I have three dreams. If I can do them in my career, I would be super happy. So the first dream is indeed to go even further in reverse engineering the principles of animal locomotion and of evolution, because there I think there are still super exciting things to be done. So first of all, even to look into the past, try to revive with robots or simulations animals that are extinct.
Yeah.
I think we by looking at the morphology, we can now have the tools to try to revive and explore what were the gates and see a bit in the past all these incredible morphologies that unfortunately have disappeared now. So there, I think that's one dream. I had one project on that was quite exciting to revive extinct animals.
The woolly mouse, the woolly mammoth. I don't know if you know this, but there was a news piece where they basically out of DNA sequencing, they got so much of DNA sequenced for the mammoth, and then they made the CRISPR thingy with the mouse, and they created the woolly mammoth, which was fascinating. And I think recently they actually the same team kind of, how would you say, is it cloning? Not really, but kind of artificially gave life to this, like a wolf. I don't recall the wolf, but like a wolf.
Werewolf, yeah, I think, yeah.
Some wolf, gray wolf, or silver. I don't recall, but something North American. Anyhow, but we're getting sidetracked from this. But yeah, that's super fascinating. And so you can understand the DNA, right? But from all your knowledge around locomotion, you can then also reverse engineer and kind of extrapolate also the locomotion aspect of these. So sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then possibly even look in the future, like predict or explore new morphologies that we like go beyond biology. Like why not create a salamander that flies, or animal with 17 legs, or something. So we there's a whole design space that we could explore in robotics and new morphology. So that's part of the first dream. The second dream is we also make models of the spinal cord of humans, and there, from medical point of view, is how to reactivate the circuits, because that's super frustrating for people who have a spinal cord injury.
Yes.
Is that the locomotion circuits are still active below the transection, but you just cannot access them. And here, with some colleagues at EPFL, like Grégoire Courtine and Jocelyne Bloch, they are world leaders in doing the spinal cord stimulations. And there, our fundamental understanding of the spinal cord circuitry can be useful to optimize their stimulation patterns, to really be able to say, okay, how should you communicate again with the spinal cord, in this case through electrical stimulation, and to give again the ability to locomote by reusing the circuits. So that's a dream. It's through collaboration with Grégoire Courtine and Jocelyne Bloch, but that's coming. So they start to have really impressive results there.
Wow.
And the final dream is the one of assistive furniture, like for people who cannot be helped with neuroprosthetics or clinically. Indeed, why not assist them with assistive furniture, or even elderly population, of course, or any population that needs a bit of help. And there, my dream is indeed to go further into this assistive furniture, because I really have the intuition we can do much more there, and that it would be wonderful technology to have at home.
I fully agree, and what some great final closing words. It's like having assisted furniture at home, and like you're saying, it's not just applicable for people with special needs, but also every one of us gets old, and so definitely I can see that. No, that's amazing, and just having some smaller items, I could even see that not being like disabled or anything. I can totally see that how this is useful. Anyhow, Auke, I thank you so much for this fascinating topic and the discussions today. I really enjoyed it. Also, really inspiring. So thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your insights, how nature's design principles are shaping the future of robotic control.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It was great to be part of the discussion.
Awesome. Well, and thanks everyone for tuning into Digital Dialogues, your compact conversations on the future of technology. You know the drill. Don't forget to visit our blog, follow our social media channels, and of course, most importantly, subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We are on all of them. Just make sure you search for Reply Digital Dialogues, and then you can subscribe there. And of course, if you don't want to do this, you can always find on reply.com the current and the previous episodes. Until then, thanks so much. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Great.